The heavy oak doors of the Montclair estate swung open earlier than expected that Friday evening. Charles Montclair, a self-made millionaire known as much for his sharp business instincts as for his quiet generosity, had returned home ahead of schedule. He had imagined he'd be greeted by the warm smell of dinner or the sound of soft piano from the living room. Instead, what he saw made his heart seize. There, in the grand hallway, his wife, elegant, poised, and cruelly composed, was shoving and kicking a young girl, the teenage daughter of their maid. The child stumbled, clutching her ribs, her wide eyes brimming with tears that sparkled in the chandelier's glow. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you were watching from. I love knowing who's listening. For a moment, the world seemed frozen. Dust swirled in the golden light, like fragments of a shattered secret. Charles had always believed his home was a sanctuary, yet here it was, a place of violence, a stage of humiliation. His mind reeled, torn between disbelief and the raw surge of anger rising in his chest. The maid, Ruth, stood a few feet away, her hands trembling as she reached for her daughter. But fear pinned her in place. She had grown used to enduring sharp words, subtle slights, and the quiet cruelty of Charles's wife, Victoria. But never, never had she imagined her daughter would become the target. Charles's voice broke the silence. It was low, dangerous, and laced with betrayal. "What are you doing?" Victoria stiffened, then turned with icy calm. Teaching her respect, she broke a vase, an expensive one. Her words fell like glass shards, brittle and cold. But Charles saw more than a vase on the marble floor. He saw power being twisted into something ugly. He had clawed his way from poverty, building his fortune brick by brick. And he had sworn never to become the kind of person who crushed the powerless beneath his feet. The girl whimpered, pressing herself into her mother's arms. Charles's chest tightened. He remembered being that child, unwanted, unseen, told to stay in his place. Rage and compassion braided together inside him. Victoria's eyes narrowed, daring him to side against her. "She's just the help's child," she sneered. The words cut deeper than any blade. The staff who worked in this house were not nameless servants. They were people who gave their time, their strength, their trust. And now, that trust had been shattered. Charles's decision came like thunder after lightning, sudden, fierce, unstoppable. "Get out," he said. Victoria's painted lips parted. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Charles growled. His voice echoed across the grand hallway, pulling whispers from the shadows where other staff had gathered. Some covered their mouths in shock. Others held back tears. The power shifted in that instant. Victoria's cruelty, once hidden behind money and status, was stripped bare under the weight of Charles's fury. She tried to laugh, a brittle sound. "You'd throw away our marriage over this? Over them?" But Charles didn't waver. His gaze was steady, unflinching. Marriage means nothing if it hides hatred. "Leave." Victoria's face hardened, her mask slipping into bitterness. She grabbed her purse, heels clacking like gunshots against the marble, and stormed out into the night. The heavy doors slammed behind her, leaving the air trembling in silence. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Charles knelt beside Ruth and her daughter. His hand, rough from years of work, rested gently on the girl's shoulder. "No one will ever hurt you in this house again," he whispered. Ruth broke down, tears spilling as she clutched her daughter. The other staff, once silent observers, stepped forward. Some murmured prayers of thanks. Others simply nodded, the tension in their faces softening into relief. But inside Charles, a storm still raged. He had loved Victoria once. He had believed in the vows they had made. Yet tonight, he had seen the truth of who she was, and the weight of that truth pressed heavy on his chest. Was it justice to cast her out so swiftly? Or vengeance disguised as righteousness? The moral dilemma gnawed at him, but the sight of the bruised girl anchored his resolve. Sometimes justice required drawing lines that could not be crossed. Over the days that followed, word spread through the community. Some whispered that Charles had ruined his marriage over a servant's child. Others called him a man of honor. But Ruth's daughter, now smiling shyly as she walked through the estate's gardens, was proof enough of what was right. At Sunday service, when Charles entered, the room fell silent. Whispers curled through the pews like smoke. Then, slowly, an elderly woman stood and began to clap. One by one, others joined until the church echoed with applause. It wasn't for his wealth, it wasn't for his power, it was for his courage to choose humanity over pride. Charles bowed his head, humbled, his heart both heavy and light. He had lost a wife, yes, but he had gained something greater. The certainty that kindness was not weakness, but strength in its purest form. Because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back. And as Charles watched Ruth's daughter laughing in the sunlight filtering through stained glass windows, he remembered the night he had returned home early, the night cruelty tried to take root in his house, and the night he chose to uproot it, once and for all. If this story moved you, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Together, we can remind the world that compassion is stronger than cruelty.